My husband vanished suddenly one day. It was several days later that I discovered he had eloped with my sister. 12 years later, after a long silence, Josh reached out again. I'm bringing my wife back home. You're in the way. Get out of my parents' house. It seems he doesn't want to see me living with my in-laws in their house. 12 years after the elopement, at a time when things have cooled down, he plans to welcome my sister, Nova, as his new wife. However, they still don't know how the feelings of everyone in the family, including me, have changed over these 12 years. My name is Ivy, and I'm 27 years old. I majored in design during my student days and later joined a web design company. While leading a typical working life, I met Josh, who became my husband at the age of 25. He worked in sales at the company and was very friendly due to the nature of his job. Drawn to his friendliness, last year we got married after a year of dating. Upon registering our marriage, we decided to live with my parents-in-laws. I quit the web design company and started working as a freelance web designer. Between doing the house chores and supporting my husband, I chose to work from home. Initially, work was scarce and my income was unstable. However, recently, I've been receiving projects from various sources, securing a sufficient income. I work at my own pace, prioritizing family. We gather around the table with my husband and parents-in-laws for meals in the morning and evening, and before bedtime, we spend quality time together as a couple. I was very content with our current life, but gradually my once very kind husband started to change. The trigger was 2 months ago when my income exceeded my previous job's salary. Achieving the target made me ecstatic, and I was buzzing with excitement all day. I couldn't wait to tell my husband. He would surely be delighted, or so I thought. As soon as my husband, now Josh, returned home, I rushed to the entrance with a beaming smile and announced, "Josh, listen. Last month's income exceeded my previous company's salary." "Huh? No way. Wasn't your company paying quite well?" "But I had been aiming to surpass that for so long. Finally, I achieved my goal." Really? Is that all?" "What should I have said? Well, congratulations, or something?" Unusually disgruntled, my husband responded with a sarcastic tone. I couldn't understand why he was in such a bad mood, and I unintentionally pressed further. "Hey Josh, are you upset about something? I thought you'd be happy for me too." "Huh? Why would I be happy? It's not like my salary increased." "Well, yay, but a wife's joy is her husband's joy, isn't it? What's that supposed to mean? I'm not that cheerful. Don't lump us together." Josh. From that day on, my husband's attitude became increasingly distant. Everyday conversations dwindled, and even the simple greetings like good morning and good night were always initiated by me. Despite being married for just 1 year, our married life seemed far from happy. Even my in-laws, who lived with us, started noticing the strained relationship, but out of consideration or perhaps hesitation, they didn't say anything. Even now, 2 months have passed, and my relationship with my husband remains unchanged. While we still have meals at the same time, conversations are almost non-existent. He changes the TV channel without asking when I'm watching, and he even eats things I bought without permission. Knowing that arguing would only escalate the situation, I remained silent. One day, amidst these continuing circumstances, as I was cleaning the house, my mother-in-law approached me with an anxious expression. "Ivy, are you okay?" she asked. "Huh? What do you mean by okay?" "Well, you know, back when you and my son just got married, you used to go out together a lot. Lately, it seems like that's not happening, and there's not much conversation either." Haha, yay. It's only been a year since we got married. It's a bit strange, isn't it? To avoid causing her worry, I forced a smile. However, she seemed to see through it all. With a serious expression, my mother-in-law looked straight at me. "If you don't want to talk, I won't force you. But I'm concerned about you. Lately, you seem a bit empty." "Empty? That's not really. Your father-in-law has noticed it too. Both of us are worried that maybe you're pushing yourself too hard." "Mother. Perhaps, initially, it was my fault for upsetting Josh about the income matter. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a bit lonely that he couldn't share in my success. The concern shown by my in-laws, who noticed the current difficulties, was incredibly heartwarming. I decided to confide in my mother-in-law about the situation. After hearing everything, she apologized with a gentle touch on my back. "I'm sorry to hear that. He isn't a man if he can't even praise someone he loves for their hard work. It's my fault. I just assumed Josh would be happy for my success. It's not something you should worry about. However, if we intervene, it might make things more complicated." Complicated? That's so. I think you and Josh should discuss this thoroughly on your own. Can you do that? Yes, I'll be fine. Thank you for listening. My mother-in-law smiled gently and said, "It's okay," as she stroked my head. My in-laws, who treated me like their own daughter, were my true saviors. With my mother-in-law's advice, I decided to have a proper conversation with my husband. That night, after my in-laws had gone to bed, I waited for his return. However, there was no sign of him coming back, even after several hours. Normally, he would be home by 10 p.m. at the latest, but it was already past 11 p.m. on this day. Why is he so late? There's no response to my messages either. Could there be something wrong? Worried, I called multiple times, but each call only rang, and there was no answer. I anxiously waited for an hour. After 12:30 a.m., he finally returned. I greeted him with a welcome back, but my husband only let out a heavy sigh, wearing an unpleasant expression on his face. "What? Why are you still awake at this hour?" "Why? Well, I wanted to have a proper conversation with you today." "A conversation? About what?" "Ever since I talked about my salary, things between us changed, right?" I said it without thinking, but maybe I hurt your pride, Josh. In that moment, my spine chilled. It was because there, staring at me with a cold face, was my husband. Overwhelmed by fear, I couldn't speak. He casually spoke, seemingly mocking me. "There's really no need to talk with you anymore." Waiting up for my return, and trying to have a conversation. Seriously, it's creepy. Creepy. As a married couple, I just wanted to build a better relationship with you. That stuff is annoying. Nick, I might have seriously married the wrong person. That's enough, okay? I'm tired from the overtime work. Don't casually bother me when I'm trying to relax at home. My husband walked past me and headed upstairs to his room. I couldn't move from the spot until the sound of him climbing the stairs faded away. Why would he say something like that? I just want a normal married life. Despite my mother-in-law encouraging me, nothing had been resolved. Yet, faced such an attitude, I couldn't gather the courage to bring up another conversation with my husband. Feeling like my entire being had been rejected, my chest tightened. After 2 months, there was no conversation with my husband, and each day passed monotonously. The day he disappeared was one of those ordinary days. Looking around his room, I suddenly felt something was amiss. Was Josh's room ever this tidy? He wasn't exactly known for being neat, yet his room was strangely organized. The closet had nearly no clothes, and there was no suitcase. Finally, I realized that he had left. I hurriedly tried to contact my in-laws, but either their phones were off or they weren't answering. Panicking and unsure of what to do, I received a call from my sister Nova. "No, sis. Long time no see." "Nova, I'm sorry, but right now, it's not the time for that. Your husband isn't there, right?" Why would you say that? How do you know? When you have an intuition about something unpleasant, it tends to be accurate. Soon enough, she revealed the unbelievable truth. "Well, you know. Right now, I'm with your husband." What are you saying? At first, it was really just a coincidence. I happened to meet your husband at a pub. We drank together. I heard that things weren't going well between you and him. Nova, you can't be serious. I'm dating your husband now. We're going a bit far away to get married, so don't get in the way, okay? Far away? Don't joke about this. Bring Josh back right now. Sorry, that's impossible. Actually, I've been interested in your husband for a while. He's tall and handsome. So, sorry. I'm taking him since he's mine now. The call abruptly ended. No matter how many times I called back, Nova didn't respond. Instead, she sent me a large number of photos. There were dozens of them, including couple shots with my husband and pictures from their dates. Either way, they were not something I wanted to stare at. A few days later, a completed divorce paper arrived from my husband. When I called his company, he had already resigned. At this point, it was no longer a problem I could handle alone. I decided to explain the situation to my own parents and in-laws, seeking their advice. It seems Josh and Nova have eloped. He quit his job without telling me. Apparently, he intends to divorce me. Once I finished speaking, everyone present was left speechless. Amidst the silence, it was my father-in-law who slowly spoke up. "Ivy, I'm truly sorry for my foolish son. I don't expect you to forgive him, and rather, you shouldn't. Father, I apologize for the harsh words, but I can't forgive your sister, Nova, either. Tommy, you're like a real daughter. I can't forgive those two who hurt my precious daughter. That's how I truly feel." Upon hearing those words from my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and my own parents nodded significantly. It was precisely at that moment, all of us had a complete change of perspective towards Josh and Nova. My in-laws had originally been considering moving soon since their house was getting old. In light of this incident, they decided to move without informing their son, expressing that they no longer wanted any connection with him. On the other hand, my own parents decided to sever ties with my sister. Even if she were to return, they would treat her as a stranger and would never allow her into the house. A person with such a lack of morality as to stealing her sister's husband is no longer our daughter, were my father and mother's opinions. I took this as an opportunity for me to return to my parents' home. As a condition for submitting the divorce papers, I demanded compensation from my husband and sister. In response, he stated, "If that's what it takes for a divorce, I'll pay." Just like that, several $1,000s of compensation was transferred to my account. With this exchange as the final chapter, I completely severed ties with my husband and Nova. 12 years after the divorce, many things have happened. My in-laws bought a condo, demolished their old house, and sold the land. My reputation as a web designer soared, and my income is incomparable to what it was before. Thanks to that, I regularly go on trips with my parents, enjoying fulfilling days. On this day, busy with work, my phone rang. Assuming it was a work-related call, I answered without checking the screen. However, the call brought back unpleasant memories. "Long time no see, Ivy. How have you been?" "Then, Josh." "As expected, you still remember your ex-husband's voice, right?" His tone was as mocking as it used to be. "What do you want? It's been 12 years since the divorce. Why contact me now?" I dismissively said, and he chuckled with an unpleasant laughter. "Well, you see, you're in the way, so could you leave within 10 minutes? "Huh? What are you talking about?" "We're in financial trouble. So, we're heading your way. I'll bring my wife back, so you better leave my parents' house." Apparently, he still believes I live with my in-laws. After 12 years, he thinks enough time has passed, and they'd be accepted. In the background, my sister Nova chimed in. "That's right, get out. These two really know nothing. After 12 years, they think they can be forgiven just like that. The world doesn't work that way. I'll show them hell." Determined, I took a deep breath and delivered my final words to them. "If you want to go back, be my guest, but I'm no longer at your parents' house." "Really? Did you get kicked out by my dad or something?" "Are you an idiot? Your parents' house doesn't exist anymore." "Huh? What are you talking about?" Josh's voice trembled, seeming anxious. At that exact moment, they must have reached where his parents' house used to be. He let out a desperate shout. "What the hell is this?" I continued unforgivingly. "As soon as you both eloped, we decided to cut ties with you. Your parents moved long ago, and my parents disowned the woman with you. In other words, there's no place for you to come back to. This has to be a joke, right? There's no way. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Neither I, nor your parents, nor my own father and mother, think of you as family. There's no value in having someone like you, who tramples on people's feelings, as part of the family. That's cruel, isn't it? We're family, right?" who trampled on the feelings of that family. Don't ever contact me again. I won't let you interfere in my life any longer. I hung up as I finished speaking, blocking their number. This time, I completely severed the last connection. Later, unable to locate my in-laws, they came to visit my parents' home during my absence. However, my father and mother had already disowned Nova. They repeatedly asked, "Who are you?" to my crying sister, and turned them away at the door. In response, the two resorted to kneeling in front of the entrance. "Please, Mom, Dad, forgive us. We have nowhere else to go." Prompted by my sister's plea, Josh quickly joined in. "Please. Our family home is gone. We have nowhere to return." "Enough. You two are no longer family." "That's right, Dad, call the police." "Wait. Hold on. Please. Father-in-law. Mother-in-law. You have no right to call me father-in-law. Get out." As they were too persistent, my father and mother called the police and reported them for causing a nuisance. Since then, their whereabouts have remained unknown. Apparently, both of them are without a job or a place to stay, desperately seeking financial help from friends. However, rumors about them have spread, and no one was willing to lend them money. Regardless, staying in their hometown seems nearly impossible for them. They must start new in an unfamiliar place, facing the hardships they've brought upon themselves. Nevertheless, this is entirely a consequence of their actions. Since they sowed the seeds themselves, they should suffer the consequences. Along with my parents, I have no intention of ever seeing them again. Hopefully, they will live with remorse for the sins they've committed. I've figured out that you've been deceiving me all along. I want a divorce, and you better pay alimony. With a triumphant smile on his face, my husband declared this. I was stunned, as were my in-laws, who were there. I had many grievances with my husband, but I still tried to make it work. I thought I could push through, for the sake of our son. Yet, the man in front of me is blaming us for a crime I don't commit. I couldn't take it anymore. I was done with him. For the sake of our future, I'm going to cut him off. My name is Sarah, a 30-year-old housewife. I live with my husband. I have a baby in my belly. The due date is fast approaching. Since our marriage, I've lived away from my hometown and family. Though my in-laws have been kind and treated me like family, I still felt isolated. You hear stories about terrible mothers-in-law, but that wasn't my experience. Yet, I had my own troubles. My troubles were all about my husband. He worked for a regular company, but he often came home late. Sometimes he wouldn't come home until after midnight. Whenever I asked what he was doing, he would give me some vague excuse like, "Adults have a lot going on. Women have things to do too, you know." Because of this, I couldn't rely on him. Often, he wasn't home when I needed help. I had terrible morning sickness. Sometimes I couldn't move all day. Even then, he'd go out drinking late. Being a housewife, all the chores were my responsibility: cooking, laundry, cleaning. On days when I felt sick, I couldn't do it all, and sometimes I couldn't even take care of myself. Even when I was bedridden, there was no one to help. The loneliness was crushing my spirit. Even if it's hard to rely on us, we're here for you, Sarah. Don't hesitate to ask for help. Occasionally, my Mill would visit our home and tell me so. Apparently, I looked quite ill. While I appreciated her words, they were still outsiders. I often worried about relying too much on them and causing trouble. In the end, I endured my loneliness and pain alone. One day, after many days like this, my body was in pain that day, but I had to take out the trash, so I whipped my heavy body into shape and went outside. The garbage bag felt unusually heavy, like it was filled with lead. Still, I had to do it, so I pushed myself. Because of that, I didn't watch my step and tripped over a step. I couldn't break my fall and collapsed. I knew I had to get up, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I must have been more exhausted than I realized. The desire to stay down overwhelmed me, and I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Apparently, a neighbor had called 911, and I was rushed to the hospital. After being monitored by the doctor, I was told I could go home after 3 days of observation. During that time, my husband didn't visit me at all. When I returned home, there he was, looking irritated. As soon as he saw me, he shouted, "Don't be a burden on me. You're a worthless wife." His words cut deep into my heart. To him, I was nothing but a nuisance, worthless as trash. Any normal husband would worry if he heard his wife had collapsed. Wouldn't it be normal to ask if I was all right? He never visited me even once while I was in the hospital. He had no idea how much anxiety I faced alone. That was when I realized I meant nothing to him. And I also realized that I had no love left for him. But inside me, there was a son who had no idea what was going on. When he's born, he'll need a father. We need money to live. Deciding on my own could limit my son's future. Maybe things would change once he was born. Maybe my husband would love him, even if he didn't care for me. I hoped for this with all my heart and decided not to get a divorce. But every night was filled with anxiety. I feared collapsing again and worried about our future. Dark farts swirled in my mind. I started suffering from insomnia. Even as I wasted away, my husband didn't care. Life was like hell, but despite it all, my son was born safely. Hearing his loud cries in the delivery room moved me to tears. It was also a relief after all the anxious days. I stayed in the hospital for a while, but my husband still didn't visit. Even during this time, his job came first. I wanted him by my side. But my in-laws visited often, sometimes bringing my husband along. He looked very displeased, like he wanted to leave immediately. Seeing this, Mimo scolded him, "You're a father, you know. Don't restrict my feelings." He completely ignored his Mill's words. What kind of man was this? Why did I ever fall for him? Why did I marry this piece of trash? I deeply regretted it. After being discharged and returning home, my husband, as expected, didn't help with the baby. Though I no longer had the weight of pregnancy, balancing childcare and housework was more challenging than I imagined. My son cried a lot at night, leaving me with very little sleep and no time to rest. I can't take it anymore. I wanted to escape. One day, my husband said, "We need to talk. Soon, I want to have an important conversation. I want my parents there too." I was curious about this important conversation, but I agreed since there was no point in refusing. That day, my husband was in a very good mood, holding his phone close. I had a bad feeling. A few days later, the appointed day arrived. The doorbell rang, and my in-laws came up. They seemed unaware of the topic and were hopeful it was good news. As we took our seats, my husband placed a sheet of paper on the table. "I want you to look at this," he said. We all leaned in to look at the paper. It appeared to be the results of a DNA test. The results indicated that there was no parent-child relationship between my husband and our son. "This child isn't mine," he said that, glaring at me. "But our son is definitely his child." Even though I insisted, he wouldn't listen. "I've figured out that you've been deceiving me all along. I want a divorce, and you better pay alimony." I was stunned. My in-laws were equally shocked by this unexpected turn of events. I thought we could finally have a proper conversation, but instead, this is what I got. Sure, my son and I had benefited from his earnings, but that didn't justify his attitude. At that moment, I decided I would get my revenge. "Fine, can I call this hospital to verify?" When I said this, my husband turned pale. "Even with all this evidence, you still want to fight? I just want to confirm if this is real. To me, at least, our son is your child." From his reaction, it was clear that the test results were probably fake. Ignoring my husband's attempts to stop me, I called the contact number on the paper. A receptionist answered and checked the records. It turned out no DNA test had been done. My husband insisted, "This is some mistake," refusing to accept the truth. He kept claiming that I was lying. "She's trying to set me up." That's what my husband says, and he treats me like a bad person. I regretted not realizing sooner that I shouldn't have tried to make things work with him. I thought that even if he was a terrible husband, he might change once our son was born. I wanted to believe he would be a good father. But looking back, that was never going to happen. It was pointless to expect anything from someone who only thought about himself. It felt like I had finally woken up from a long dream. I realized he was unnecessary in my life. Now, it was my turn to present my papers. Both my husband and in-laws tilted their heads when they saw the brown envelope I had placed on the table. "This is proof of your infidelity," I said. When I said that, my husband started to panic. It was obvious he knew exactly what I was talking about. Ignoring him, I opened the envelope and took out the contents. There were numerous photos. It was a photo of my husband flirting with another woman. Some of them were photographed going in and out of hotels, so they cannot deny it. "I had my suspicions about you for a while. So, I had you investigated. I had doubted him for some time. He was coming home late, which I could not understand on the grounds that he was working overtime, and he suddenly started going out drinking with his workmates. I was scared to find out the truth, so I hesitated to investigate. But one day, while he was in the shower, his phone on the table buzzed with a message. It was from a woman named Jessica, saying, 'I can't wait to see you again.' I impulsively picked up his phone. Fortunately, the phone wasn't locked, so I could see what I needed right away. Once I confirmed the affair, I hired a private investigator to look into my husband. The photo of the phone screen would also serve as strong evidence, they said. Soon after, photos of my husband enjoying time with another woman arrived in my hands. "You were deceiving me." My husband, his face red with anger, yelled at me, and I retorted, "You're the one who was deceiving me." He tried to defend himself, saying, "But this is too much and this isn't fair." But his words no longer hurt me. I felt no love for this man anymore. No matter what he said, it didn't bother me. I just wanted this moment to be over. My husband continued to shout in anger. The more I didn't respond, the more he raged. "You can't live without me. You should have just listened to me." As I let his words wash over me, my Phil stood up, yelling, "You idiot." My in-laws, who had been silently watching, now turned red with anger and confronted him. "How could you do something so outrageous? Poor Sarah, we didn't raise you to be this way." Apologize to Sarah. When they scolded him, my husband tried to make excuses, but they shouted, "No excuses." Finally, half in tears, he muttered, "I'm sorry." Urged by his parents, he knelt at my feet. "I'm truly sorry. Please forgive me." His pathetic demeanor was a stark contrast to his earlier attitude. My in-laws said, "You don't have to forgive him," and I decided not to. "Let's get a divorce. I'll be seeking alimony." My husband tried to object, but his parents' stern glares made him reluctantly agree. Afterward, my in-laws also knelt before me. "We're sorry for our foolish son. We'll make sure he makes amends. We're sorry for all the suffering you've endured. We hope you'll be happy from now on." They were so different from their son that I almost doubted they were truly related. My husband remained kneeling the whole time. Finally, I was able to divorce him. When I handed him the divorce papers, he signed without resistance. I had consulted with a lawyer, so we thoroughly discussed the alimony. Given the evidence and my insomnia, the alimony amount was substantial. I also identified his mistress and demanded alimony from her as well. Afterward, I returned to my parents' home to relax and recuperate. Of course, my son came with me. There was no way I was letting my ex-husband have custody. He agreed to pay child support, which would help raise our son. Though I had worried for a long time, the end came swiftly. I secretly regretted not taking action sooner. Later, I heard that my ex-husband was dumped by his mistress. It seems she had gotten pregnant and demanded marriage, which prompted his divorce. My ex-husband, thinking he should take responsibility, chose her after she announced her pregnancy. But it turned out the child wasn't his. The mistress had been seeing other men, and the child likely belonged to one of them. She knew this but tried to use my ex-husband to make her life easier. However, when she realized she would have to pay alimony, she ran away. My ex-husband was serious about marrying her, and the shock was significant. He stopped going to work and became a recluse at his parents' house. Naturally, my ex-in-laws couldn't support their reclusive son forever. They easily abandoned him, and now he works at a factory, living on a meager wage. "I can't do this anymore. Please, help me." One day, I got a call from an unknown number, and it was my ex-husband. It seems he borrowed a friend's phone to call me. "I realize I can't live without you. I'll change my ways, so please come back." I sighed in disbelief at his desperate pleading. How could he claim he couldn't live without me? Even if I helped him now, he'd betray me again eventually. He cried and begged on the other end of the line. In a cold voice, I told him, "I'm sorry, but I have no intention of getting back together with you. Don't ever contact me again. If you try anything, I'll consult my lawyer again." He shouted, "Wait," but I ignored him and hung up. He called repeatedly from the same number, but I blocked it. I decided to go to a cell phone store one of these days. I wanted to upgrade my phone anyway, so this might be a good time to get a new one. As for me, I got a job at a company nearby. There's a great daycare near my parents' house, where I leave my son. On busy days, I rely on my parents, but my coworkers understand my situation, so I rarely stay late. I can spend time with my son and save for our future. I cherish my son deeply. No matter what path he chooses in life, I want to support him wholeheartedly. If he ever goes astray like his father, I want to do everything I can as his mother. Hurting others without remorse is wrong, and not feeling guilty about it is even worse. Everyone makes mistakes. I'm sure my son will too. That's why, as his mother, I want to teach him always to be sincere with others.